It's time for us to talk about money. As always, we like to talk about how we can best go about our lives as adults in this world. And Paul Merriman is the financial advisor from askpaul.ie, and he always talks to us about money. Today, we're going to talk about something that can be one of the more stressful aspects of dealing with money, which is dealing with money in a relationship. Paul, would I be right in saying that it can be very stressful?
Oh, 100%. Yeah. No, it is. It's probably the one thing that couples will say, especially when we get couples into the practice for a financial planning consultation or in Zoom rather nowadays. You'll always see there's one usual dominant person that wants to do something possibly good, not necessarily bad, and there's always a lamb to the slaughter usually to the side. But yeah, it can cause an awful lot of stress. I think there's so much for people to understand about money that they don't, and that's what we started as Paul, trying to educate people on money. But when a couple come together, I do this thing for couples all the time where when they move in especially, they have to look at their finances like it's a limited company and they're the MDs and they're the financial controllers, and they just have to, because there's so much to contend with. Like, there's tax obviously, which is the big one, there's earned income, there's how you're spending, who you're spending, have you got a spender and a saver in a relationship? Lots of that's a big clash. If you have two savers, it's usually great, but they mightn't have the best time. So you kind of want to balance them out both, and you want to help people trying to realise how money is there to supposedly, you have to keep a little bit of money aside just to enjoy your life as well. So it depends. It's like a coaching, really, Louise, when you talk to couples, because you're trying to get the best out of both.
I just
sets.
noticed that you didn't say anything about when you have two spenders together.
Yeah.
What happens then, Paul?
Yeah,
Financial ruin?
That's a car crash. I'm actually picturing couples in the car at the moment looking at each other going, what are you? What am I? What do you think I am? But I think it's, if you have two spenders, it's a big difficulty. But I think the one thing is that people don't realise how easy it is to actually put a financial plan in place around your money. And it's very easy to put structures in place. It's very easy not to spend a waste of money. I don't mind two spenders coming in for a financial planning session, because there's various ways in which they can help them save money. Obviously, tax is a big one, cutting down tax liabilities where you can. And the other one is maybe like banking fees and making sure they're making their money work harder for them. They don't realise how they can save a small amount of money, how that grows, and how it can really make a big impact on their finances in the future. So even something as simple as the children's allowance being set aside if they have kids, or maybe only it's a 200 quid a week or 200 quid a month being put aside. So they usually, if I do get two spenders in front of me, it's usually something that they don't mind changing small habits for kind of long-term gains.
Yeah.
So small-time pain for long-term gains. So it doesn't, like I said, it doesn't really make a difference whether you're two. Sorry, it does make a difference if you're two spenders, obviously. But I think what we're trying to get is that from the pressure points is when you have two people that aren't on the same page and maybe never discuss money, and they don't get into a relationship together, and they never have a discussion about money, and they never have a chat, and that's usually a disaster waiting to happen, in my opinion, and what I've seen in the past.
Okay. Yes, that's fine. I know I say it every time, but I just have to say, I can't
Talk about
talk
money.
about it. Like,
Yeah.
why? What is wrong with me?
Yeah, look, it's every Irish person. It's brought up not to speak about money. It's not, you're brought up, maybe a lot of people are brought up maybe not to tell the neighbours, not to tell, you kind of keep your cards very close to your chest. But when it comes to problem, Louise, I've had a situation before, I think I said this in your show before, where you have a client, they're going for a mortgage application, and let's just give it, the man is the issue with this case, and they've have an ICB problem, and they've never told their partner, and now they can't get a mortgage, and now it's a big blow up situation. They're the things you want to really avoid.
Yeah.
So it's, if you have got an issue, you have got a problem. Not saying the first day take out your ICB credit search, but you want to be talking about, if you have got problems, you have got issues before. Like, I had a situation before where literally a couple had the mortgage application in, and it came back that he had a really bad problem with a credit card. It was really hard for them as a couple to have to deal with that, but he just kind of kept his head in the sand and didn't want to do it until the very last minute, which is not a great situation. Which is understandable, not a great situation.
So then let's talk about, when do you think a couple should be starting to talk about money?
I think when you move in. I think when you move in is the obvious point when you start discussing money. And I think what people should be doing, and this is not me preaching to people, this is what I've seen work really well with couples. 20 years experience out with thousands of couples in my career from a financial planning point of view. And usually when they have a joint account, not for all the money, but for running the house.
Yeah.
So the joint account for the mortgage, the bills, the groceries, the childcare, whatever it is, and then keeping the rest of your money separate into. I think Revolut's very popular now. Most couples that come to see me seem to have their spends on Revolut or N26. So that's quite popular. I think it's an easier way for them to kind of control their own money without getting too involved. And that's absolutely fine. But I do think the house needs to be one account for the house. I think that stops misdirect debit, stops bills being missed or credit cards not being paid and kind of problems creeping in on money on them.
And secrets, I suppose,
yeah,
to
and
a certain extent.
Yeah, and secrets. But I think if you like, it's okay to have secrets, but it's okay to spend your money the way you want to spend it once it's not impacting on the finances of the family. And I think that's a really important thing for people to understand. That's why I think the joint account is like a safety net for everybody.
Yeah.
So if you add up all your bills and they're, with your rent, your mortgage and your ESB, your gas, your phone, your broadband, all the usual stuff, groceries, everything else, if they add up to, £3,000, just throw 1,500 quid each if both of you are working in, and then whatever you do with your disposable income after that, in my opinion, it's generally your own business.
And then I suppose you can enjoy that money because you have all your bills paid.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and there's no stress then on what are you doing with this. And what happens is when couples get into a situation where they have no money or they're running low on money, and then somebody's spending money foolishly, that ends up being a clash in most relationships. So, like I said, it's just putting those parameters around and moving in. But I think the joint account situation, like I said, it's not for everyone's money to go in together and people to spend on each other's money or whatever. It's just for, I think, for the run of the house, and that usually works well for most couples.
And is there a particular joint account that you would recommend, or is it any current account?
Actually, this is a good one when it comes to Revolut and N26. I get this all the time because they don't do joint accounts. Now, I think the KBC current account is quite good because it's anything over 2,000 lodged in a month. It's a free account, which is quite cool. So I'd probably spend most couples that way for that joint family house. And then, I'm a big fan of Revolut and N26 because they're free banking, and if they're done correctly and they can really help you keep an eye on your hand. From a fintech point of view, they're probably the best fintech out of any of the Irish.
Financial technology.
Yeah, sorry. Yeah, there's the dragon.
It's okay, I'm here to translate.
Yeah. So I think that's really cool. It's a really cool app, and it can help you spend your money, help you keep track of how you're spending your money and what you're doing, which is obviously a good thing. But yeah, I think that's a good shout. The KBC current account for couples over 2K, it's free, and then pumping your money aside.
So then if you're thinking about moving toward a mortgage, should you also be opening a joint savings account?
Yes, you should. Well, in fairness, what I always say for mortgage applications is that the easier the application is for the underwriter, the better you get through the process quicker. So I always like to see just one savings account because you just have one savings account to show the underwriter. So, okay, two is a big deal.
You're cutting back the work for them.
You're just cutting back the work for everybody, and it's going to be an easier process. I think that's good. I think I mentioned the show before. I think the Bank of Ireland mortgage saver is a good shout if you're going to go towards saving together. You don't have to draw down with Bank of Ireland, but if you do, you get a couple of grand extra as well, so it's not a bad if I'm just shouting out different banks. But I think the credit union, the on post anywhere you want to save together for mortgage, absolutely fine. You don't actually have to have one particular bank. You don't have to go to the bank you're going to be doing the mortgage with, which is really important. But what I want to talk about when it comes to mortgages is if people are cohabitating, as in they're living together, not married, versus when they are married. If something goes wrong, they have a massive tax bill because it's like inheritance tax off a stranger, Louise. So you could be living together for 20 years, have raised your family, but just never got married. Good old Ireland. And you're seen in the lives of the revenue commissioners as strangers. So if you're married and something goes wrong, between spouses, your assets pass tax-free. No one cares. But if you're strangers, you're not. You're actually getting a big tax bill. It's called capital acquisition tax, CAT, at 33%.
Okay, so I live with my partner for 25 years.
Yep.
My partner has an accident and dies.
Yep.
I have to pay tax.
You're basically, let's say the house is worth €400,000, okay?
Yeah.
Basically, his or her part of the €200,000 is going to you as a stranger, and you have to pay inheritance tax on that 200,000. You have a small exemption of 16,250, but the remaining 180 odd grand is taxed by revenue at 33%. It's the sneakiest thing in the world.
Not okay, is
it's not okay. And I actually said this. We have a blog, I think, coming out on Monday in the back of this, and I say it's actually horrendous, and there's not enough politicians talking about it. There's not enough press given to it. Yeah. You could have kids together. You could spend your whole life together, and it's
like some people don't want to get married.
No, they don't, and it should be fine.
But it doesn't say anything about their commitment.
No, but again, exactly. But you could be 20 years. But as well as that, what you have to remember is that a lot of couples end up cohabitating before they get married.
Yeah.
So I think that's kind of I don't really know anybody that's got married before they moved in together, and a lot of couples have kids before they get married now as well. So it mightn't be a thing, or even 20 years. It could be a thing where you're only, unfortunately, maybe a year or two together and an accident happens and you're in that situation where you owe the
Yeah.
revenue commissioners a big chunk of change. Now, luckily enough, you can insure against it. So you can take out an insurance policy and insure each other's lives. So if anything does happen and it's pittance, it's really, really, really good. I would really encourage anybody that's listening this morning that aren't married and living together, especially if they have kids, to reach out to us and try and get those kind of simple plans in place.
Yeah.
And that's what I'm talking about. Couples have a lot to know, but they don't really know any of this.
Yeah.
Because it's not something you're taught in school, which is a
Yeah.
big problem we have with personal finance in this country. But you don't need that tax bill situation. It's an absolute disaster.
Okay. Is there anything else that you feel like is absolutely essential for couples to know?
I think it's essential that couples need to know about income tax. I think everyone needs to know how their payslip works. I think everyone needs to know how much tax they're paying and when they're paying tax. I think people need to understand if you are a female and you're going on maternity leave and you're taking maybe extended leave, or you're a man, you're taking parental leave, if you're on the higher rate of income tax together and you don't earn for a year, it's possible to transfer between spouses tax credits. So it means you earn more. That has to be done by a certain point of the year as well, usually March of the financial year. So there's just loads of things really. But I think you need to keep an eye on that. And if you are going on maternity leave or thinking extended maternity leave or parental leave, it's very important that you seek financial advice from somebody and make sure and just give them as much heads up. I think when people have kids these days, they kind of plan to be off for maybe the extra 3 months or 6 months, and they put some plan in place, but just making sure you're not paying too much tax while that's going on. So that's a big one for a couple.
Yeah, make sure you take advantage of all the options.
Exactly. And
afforded to
remember,
you.
remember said earlier on about running your house like a limited company. Limited companies would have advisors like me. They'd have tax advisors, they'd have solicitors. So once a year, just touch place with your financial planner. If you don't have one, head over to the Ask Paul page, and there's loads of free content there, as you know. But if you need a financial planner, I think everyone needs to check in once a year. So that's what's going on in life. Are we having kids? Are we getting job promotions? Are we going to pay more tax? Should we reduce our tax by funding for our future, for retirement? There's a million and one things that people need to know.
Yeah, I mean, I suppose it's a bit like the dentist, really. Like, you might not think anything's wrong, but you just don't know. No, well, that sounds very panicky, but like it's not a bad idea to check in with your dentist and make sure
No,
that
exactly.
everything's okay.
Yeah. Do you know what's a really good, Nigel?
Because you can't do your own dentistry.
No, you can't. You can't. You know, the good one I think is like if a good financial planner is like an architect. They pull in people from whether it's a tax problem, whether it's an inheritance tax problem, or a legal problem, or a will. Actually, just on the will front, just the one thing people need to know as well is that if you're cohabitating, okay, and you don't have a will, so you buy a house, please, 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 when you're doing the mortgage, just write a will. Because you're not entitled to the other part of the house. So if you have a couple together, say in their 30s, and just God forbid he goes out and it's a car crash, something happens, his part of the house is going to his family, not to his girlfriend or his fiance, unless there's a will.
Okay.
So there's just a ball of contention there, and there's a load. I'm not trying to scare everyone on
No,
Saturday morning.
this is important.
But it's really
important.
this is what the How to Be an Adult is about. But there's just a lot of things that people need to be considerate about.
Yeah, okay. All right. Well, look, I think that's all very important information, and I'm sure people are processing it now. So if you have a question for Paul, send them in to us, 51552. You can email Louise at rte.ie as well. And we will be back in just a couple of minutes with more of Paul's expert advice.